This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of June 1st, 2021. And first, before I even start, a couple of apologies and explanations. The timing of this podcast has been a little bit weird the last couple of weeks, and that's going to continue for about one more week. We've got some upgrades going on in our West Coast Operations Center, try to make things a little more COVID safe and a little bit better for everybody. And that means that it hasn't always been the best moment to be recording. Even the huge amount of sound deadening that we've got in our studio is only going to go so far when you're talking about some of the upgrades that we're talking about. And so I expect in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, that things will be completely back to normal and we'll be back on our regular cadence, if you will. But enough of that for now. This week's podcast is all about solar energy. And, that's really not as far of a reach as you think, because you can get a lot of stuff at solidsignal.com that is solar enabled. You can actually even get big solar panels at solidsignal.com, and you can get a bunch of different gadgets and stuff like that that work with solar energy. The idea that sun power could be used to create electricity, or that more precisely, it was possible to translate the energy coming from the sun into electricity, that's been known for about 140 years. And solar cells themselves have been around since the late 1950s. But it wasn't until the early 1970s that you started to see them at all. And even at that time, they were only capable of producing very, very small amounts of power. That's because they were extremely, extremely inefficient. Solar cells have gotten more and more efficient over the past couple of years, and every year they seem to get better. So now the best solar cells seem to be about 2% efficiency, which means, if you look at it a different way, about 98% inefficiency. That's enough so that you can have, say, the average size roof do a pretty good job of powering the average size home. That's great. And, it's a big jump in our understanding of the way that we generate energy and what we do. But obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. And that's where we find ourselves with solar energy right now, because right now we're at a bit of a conundrum. Matter of fact, all forms of alternative energy, I think we have to be honest, are at a bit of a conundrum. When we look at now, electric cars are very quickly getting to the point where it costs less to build one than it costs to build a traditional gas-powered car because they're so much simpler. But we still haven't dealt with the issue of what happens when the batteries wear out and the cost of replacing them and what to do with them once they're no longer suitable for electric cars. Getting back to solar, the issues revolve around still battery technology, because since the sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day, you want to have a situation where you can store some of that energy. And also the manufacturing techniques for solar panels, the use of chemicals and techniques that aren't necessarily earth-friendly, and the relatively short lifespan of these panels. An electrical generating plant can last 40 to 50 years, but because solar technology is evolving so quickly, you could potentially be wanting to change out those brand new panels in as little as 10 years. Honestly, that kind of happens with rapidly growing technologies, and it's no reason to stay away from them. It doesn't mean that you should stop using solar, because even with the way that it's manufactured, it's still a lot better for the environment over time. But solar has a long way to go, and I think it's going to get there. It's just going to take some time. I think that if we could see solar panels that were 30 to 40% efficient, that would be incredible. I mean, that would where you could technically have a solar panel on the roof of a car, and that would make a meaningful improvement to the electric car itself, to the range of that car, because you'd be generating electricity at the same time you were using it. There could come a point with solar panels where a solar panel, the 3 foot by 3 foot, could power an entire house. That's really kind of where it's going, and I think that's really kind of exciting. And we will probably see that in the next 20 to 30 years if we want to see it. See solar panels plastered all over everything, and eventually get to the point where fairly large commercial buildings are capable of producing such a surplus of energy that traditional power plants are no longer necessary. That's exciting. That's cool stuff. And we're getting there. But that's not where we are today. As you look at solar energy, and what you're using it for, it's a supplement for the most part, and it's a short-term supplement. But it's going to get better, and I think that it becomes a much more exciting technology probably in about 10 years when we really start to understand ways that we can store it. Battery technology has held solar back for a lot of years. Battery technology holds a lot of things back, but battery technology is improving. Over the last 10 years, we've seen the cost to produce traditional batteries, large-scale batteries, go down, and that's made solar a lot more cost efficient. What we need to see in the next 10 years, of course, is really a new kind of battery technology. First of all, one that is in itself better for the environment, because we don't want to be taking these heavy metals out of the environment and dealing with that in a way where we eventually end up with shortages of them. And secondarily, what we want to do is try to see new battery technologies that are capable of much more energy density and are less expensive to produce. Imagine, for example, if you had something the size of a AA battery, and that could power a car for, 20 minutes, or power your entire house for an hour or 2 hours. If you think about it that way, that's what we're really shooting for. Because battery technology, while more efficient than solar technology, still isn't super efficient. And by nature, charging speeds have to be very low, because otherwise, the thing's going to kind of explode. So these kind of technology improvements are super exciting. I think that we're going to see them in the next 10 years. It's going to be a massive change to the way that we power everything. And that's only going to end up being good. But we have a couple of bumps in the road in the meantime. And I hope that 10 years from now, I'm still doing this podcast and we can talk about all the great changes that we've seen. But for now, that's the end of this one. I will be probably producing the next podcast toward the end of this week instead of the beginning of next week. So again, apologies for the kind of lumpy scheduling. We are just finishing up here and looking forward to getting back to normal. Believe me. In the meantime, like, subscribe, leave comments, do everything that you can, because honestly, that's how my bosses know that I'm doing a great job. That's it for the podcast for this week, and I'll talk to you soon.